Final episode here of the Top 100 Breakdown. That means we're going from 22 to number 1 here on Just Baseball's Top 100 Prospect List. Of course, you have me, Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. And he even has a special name because I know you're excited. For those watching on YouTube, you can see Cam Smith, Astros right fielder for Jack McMullen. Are you making your claim here? We're going to get to Cam. We're going to talk about him. I know that's probably one of the guys you're most excited to talk about here. And guess what? I can also finally say it, Jack. This is the best group of prospects we're going to talk about here in this series.
So corny. Yeah, no, we're gonna shelve that for the midseason update or whatever. It's like, oh, this is the best crop. Yeah, but it is the best crop. And I'm excited about Cam Smith. I'm excited about a couple of these guys. Like, we're going to talk about Drake Baldwin in this clump, and Baldwin is going to be the opening day catcher for the Atlanta Braves. A lot of these guys are knocking on the door of the big leagues. I think about a Jackson Jobe. Roman Anthony's looked awesome. And Noah Schultz, it seems like he's going to be up in due time. So 1 through 22, there's like legit MLB intrigue, I think.
And that's a big, important point here because you're going to see the players where I'm going to probably make a more passionate case for certain players than others, not because I have a preference towards them, but because it'll probably be in reaction to the reaction that we receive. So like, I'm going to want to make a more compelling case to the biggest surprises, right? Like a Dalton Rushing was one that people are like, how is that guy top 10 prospect? I'm going to make a compelling case there. Zyhir Hope, Kevin McGonigle, like those are going to be compelling cases. Rushing is right there, like knocking on the door of the big league. So proximity was a big part of him. But like with Hope and McGonigle, those are two of the few guys that we're going to talk about in this episode that are not knocking on the door of the big league. So that kind of shows you how high we are on their upside and what they're already able to do. Because for the most part, proximity is a big part of this whole equation when you get to the top end talents here of the top 100, because there's so much volatility. There's so much talent. If you can combine talent and hedge as much volatility as possible, those guys are probably going to be near the top. So a lot of prospects that we're going to talk about here in these 22 are going to be guys that are closer to the big leagues, and the ones that aren't have either huge upside or are already showing a higher floor relative to their peers.
So in essence, what you're saying is you're just going to dunk on the haters.
Can't dunk guys yet, right? Because who knows what's going to happen, but I am going to lay out.
That was a very nuanced, advanced way of saying I'm gonna dunk on the haters.
I'm gonna lay out my case. We'll start with 22, right? Unless you have anything else.
Real quick, an opening shout out to King Peyton. I feel like Rosillo referring to him as Wargon, but it's Peyton. King Peyton Genus is in the background here, plugging away with B-roll. So an enhanced YouTube experience for the top 22 prospects in baseball.
Yeah, and if you're listening on audio, check it out later on YouTube, because I'm excited to see. If you watched our draft coverage this past year, Peyton was at the helm there too, putting in the highlights, helping us kind of just make it a production. And if you all like this is definitely something we'll try to kind of lean into further. If we could clone Peyton, we would, but we'll find a way to try to pull these off more frequently with the B-roll and all of that aspect of it as well. We'll start with Noah Schultz. And looking at him at 22 is an interesting spot, because part of me wanted to put him up higher, but at the same time, you look at a lot of the guys that are ahead of him, and it's kind of hard to figure out where exactly to place him. But at the same time, I mean, what he has done already, I think is as impressive as any young pitching prospect in baseball. And I think you could still look at him and say, hey, there's still a lot more potential here too, as he's just kind of scraping the surface of what he can ultimately be as a 6'9". There's maybe 6'10" now, left-handed pitcher that was drafted out of high school. They've been a little bit more careful with, but this past year, he threw more innings than they said he was going to, right? They wanted to keep it to 75-ish. He threw comfortably more than that and held his velo for the duration of the year, and just continues to look much more polished than really I think anybody would have expected from a 6'9" prep left-hander. The command paired with the stuff, and I think even more stuff to dream on, I think makes him as exciting of a pitching prospect as you have in professional baseball.
He's an NBA power forward, and I'm trying to find the tweet of the report that's saying Noah Schultz got bigger this offseason, but this guy in spring breakout, I think, embodied exactly what you saw last year. And to your point, like, he exceeded maybe the goal of the innings output in 2024 that was set out for him before the year. if you're really good the entire time, it's pretty easy to surpass an innings output. And you just think about like raw pitch count. This guy was not walking as many people as many expected him to, maybe even the White Sox front office. So not only is he punching the world out, he's also getting a ton of early contact on the ground. And that is going to, I think, allow him to get deep into games at the major league level. And when you can push an innings count on a guy this young, that tells you he's doing something really good.
I think it's a great point. And the ground ball thing is really, I think, a fun wrinkle in this too, where he's got a heavy fastball. So I don't know if he's going to be racking up the whiffs at the degree of maybe what some people may expect because of the way he looks and the way that he throws. The slider is going to get whiffs. That's one of the best sliders in minor league baseball already. Just for context, opponents at 150 against it this past year, and he landed it for a strike about almost 70% of the time, which is crazy stuff. But it's not this riding four-seamer from like a lower release that's going to just destroy within the zone. It's more of that heavy fastball that has a late run and bores in on the hands of potentially left-handed hitters or just buries under the barrels of righties. That's going to get that early weak contact. But then when he needs the whiffs, he can get that with the slider. I think a big pitch to watch and see how it develops is that changeup, which he flashed. And it looks like it could be an above average pitch. It's just trying to find the consistency with that offering as he gets more comfortable throwing it. But with the unique release and what he's able to do, and the fact that he can repeat his mechanics the way that he can, right? Like you mentioned the walks, he only walked 6.9% of batters last year. That's not what you would expect from a guy of his archetype.
No, and this report from Josh Friedman at WGN. Noah Schultz update. Sox PR tells us the top prospect now is 6'10", 240, up from 6'9", 220. So what a freako, man.
Yeah,
and if he can keep the mechanics repeatable like that, the sky's the limit for him.
I got to update those measurables. But, I mean, that's the crazy part. He's going to mix the whiff with the ground balls. And I think that there may not be enough whiff to be an ace, but I think the floor is so high, and then he's just going to get enough weak contact to consistently be a quality 3, I think, in the median outcome, and potentially just a really, really good 2 for a long time.
Yeah.
Moving into 21 here. Josue De Paula checks in from the Los Angeles Dodgers. And De Paula, this dude is just scraping the surface of what he can be, and it's already damn good. And that's what I'm really excited about with him, because he's still just 19 years old. Another guy that measurables need to be updated, because I think whatever we have online is like 6'2", whatever. And he's not. He is a monster of a man. He's probably 6'4". Look at like the videos that we have right now. Does that not look like Yordan Alvarez?
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like a little mini Yordan, man.
Like,
and shout out the Malmo Oat Milkers jersey too. What a weird promotion.
That is a weird one. He's a monster, man. And what I love is we talk about the pitchers who, like a Quinn Matthews, where he had to learn how to pitch because he had subdued stuff. Yeah. So it's spotting up and doing all these different things. And then all of a sudden the stuff upticks, and now you have that pitchability and the stuff to go with it. De Paula, he's got the hit tool kind of ahead, and he's hitting the ball hard, but he hasn't fully figured out how to tap into that in games. Yet he has continued to be very productive at each stop while being aggressively pushed. We haven't seen him slug a ton. It was a 413 slug last year, but 90th percentile exit velocity of 105.5 miles per hour. He's running a chase rate of 15%. And the contact rates have consistently been above average. He's not striking out. And I'm looking at a guy with his frame who keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger. What is it going to look like when he learns how to elevate a little bit more consistently and just get into that power? He's flashed it to all fields. I mean, he's hit backside bombs that are no doubters. It's just a consistency side of things, but he's a hitter first right now, which I actually really like for a player of his archetype, because that power is going to come. He's 19. He's going to find ways to get into it more consistently.
It is funny. Like, we always call Lazaro Montes Mini Yordan, Las Montes in the Mariners system, because he was called Mini Yordan when he was 17 years old and hit a ball 118 miles an hour. But like, this is probably the better example of a Mini Yordan, Josue De Paula. So if you hear that and you're questioning why there's a Dodger at number 21 in baseball, it's because he's scratching the surface of what he can do from a power department, and he already looks like a mini Yordan Alvarez, and he's been good in the lower levels.
Well, and the difference too is Laz has potentially top of the scale power, but he's not going to hit anywhere close to as frequently as Jordan is.
He's Schwarber. Like, he
Yeah,
can be Schwarber, but this
exactly.
can actually kind of sort of be Jordan. Now, I don't think anybody can be Jordan.
No, but it's the starter kit of, wait, his contact rates are that while he hits the ball that hard? And I love how smooth his operation is. In terms of the mechanics, that's where the subjective side of it, I will buy into these swing mechanics as easily as just about any guy that we're going to talk about in this grouping here, because it's smooth. He starts it early and he repeats it so well. And I think that's exemplified with the 15% chase rate and how he's just so comfortably able to see the ball early and consistently make good decisions. Now, the defense needs to get better. It's not a huge important aspect, but it would be nice if it could get better in a corner. And then the other side is just, again, elevating the ball more consistently. But a 46% hard hit rate, it's pretty damn good. So I'm excited to see if this is the year maybe where De Paula makes that leap. He'll turn 20 years old, by the way, on May 24th.
Damn.
Number 20, Bubba Chandler. Got a chance to just see Bubba in action recently. And that spring breakout came, but that's what we have airing right now. Holy crap. That was one of the more ridiculous performances. I know it's just a short spurt starter letting it eat, and he wanted to let it eat there in a short spurt. He knew he was only going to go a couple. Fastball was absolutely flying out of his hand. I was right behind home plate to watch that. But then he's throwing these low 90s changeups that were registering as sinkers. His cutter looked ridiculous as well. But there were some swings from some lower level guys who are good prospects that just, you could tell, had not seen a fastball like that yet, where they couldn't even finish the swing because they started it so late. I think Nori was one of them, where it was like he gets the foot down, he starts to swing, and the ball is in the catcher's glove, and he just basically check swung. It was a called strike anyways, because it was just like, holy crap. That got on me way quicker than I thought. This guy's fastball is crazy. This guy's stuff's crazy. Please don't waste too many bullets in AAA.
I don't think it's going to happen. Peyton, can you re-rack the video here? Because I just want to watch that rocket ship fastball in spring breakout again. I mean, you want to talk clothesline fastball. This is not straight. That is taking off of his fingertips. You do not see a straight line fastball like that, really, ever. And the fact that he was working that tighter slider off of that, I know he feels really comfortable with that tighter slider, but the fact that he was 99 to 100 in short spurts, which makes you know that the floor is a closer and a really, really good closer.
Yes.
But like the fact that he has that high speed changeup and he's comfortable with that. We talked to him on that, call up interview last year when he was in Indianapolis. He said he freaking loves his changeup. I actually thought the slider was better when he got to AAA. Because he had a better feel for it. And the changeup was a little bit more spotty, but in Altoona, you could argue the changeup was better. So I think this guy has a true 3-pitch mix. And I think the sky's the limit for him. I see like 3 or 2 starter here.
Oh, you could easily see the 2 starter, but I think, yeah, you've got a great chance at landing as a 3 just off the fastball alone. What's funny is the cutter was more, or the slider that usually registers as a cutter was a lot more effective for him at the highest level that he played at last year in AAA. But that changeup from just a pitch perspective, comfortably projects as a plus offering, and also has been one that when it's working off of the fastball riding at the top, the way that it can tunnel off of it is crazy. It's finding that consistent feel for it, as you alluded to. He landed it for a strike about 59% of the time. But if that slider is his third pitch, because he's found more consistency with the changeup, which, by the way, had a 21% swinging strike rate last year. I mean, that's a 3-pitch mix that's going to make him very, very successful. And then he'll still mix in that taste-breaking curveball to steal strikes here and there. And that's all he really needs. I love the idea of him being a potential number 2 behind Skeens. And, if Jared Jones is able to get back and get healthy, there'll be arguments of who's the 2 and who's the 3 behind Skeens. And I think it'll just depend on who's hotter in that given month when in terms of who the right answer is.
I was already hearing those questions at the end of the AAA season. Who do you think's better, Jared Jones or Bubba Chandler? I'm like, I don't know the right answer to that, man. We haven't seen Bubba yet at the major league level, but I think those two are going to be very, very similar.
I would argue that Bubba has a chance to give more looks with that slider
Absolutely.
on the heels of the changeup as well. But I would also argue that Jerry Jones's fastball slider combination is more elite than any two pitches that Bubba could pair together. So it's a wonderful conversation to have and problem quote unquote to have if you're the Pirates, which is why I think you should invest in offense. So number 19, Emmanuel Rodriguez checks in. This is going to be fun video because this guy absolutely melts baseballs. The problem is his body kind of melts on him too, where there's just a lot of weird fluky injuries though. And so that's why I'm hoping that he can stretch together more health. But we talked about it when we went over the twin system. I mean, you're hard pressed for this guy to play more than 50 games. I don't know what the goal is. I mean, I would still assume that it's a full season, but I mean, it's almost where you want to reshift your expectations and just say, hey, like let's gun for 110 games this year and hope it works out. I don't know if they should schedule more off days for him, but the thing is it's a fluky diving into the bag thumb issue here or a sprained ankle that happened in camp now this year. So I don't know if that's necessarily beneficial. It just might be a little bit of bad luck. But focusing on the more important point, on sheer talent, this guy's a top 10 prospect. And I really wanted to put him in the top 10. Him spraining his ankle right as we're finalizing this list did not really make it much easier. But I loved everything that we saw from him last year before he went down with the thumb issue, where you saw the defense looking as good as it's looked in center, where I think he looks like a solid everyday center fielder defensively. You saw the speed become more of a part of his game, where he was as good of a base stealer as he's really ever been as well. You saw the approach where, yes, he's extremely patient, and at points it was passive, become more of just patient instead of passive. And then you saw him lean into the power as effectively as ever to all fields, where it used to be a little bit selling out to the pull side, but as you saw in those videos, backside, center field, just hitting the ball hard everywhere. And I thought that's basically the final version here is the best three true outcome guy that he could possibly be while playing good defense in center field and giving you speed on the base paths. How many three true outcome players are giving you valuable defense at a premium position and value on the base paths as well?
Jose Siri.
Yeah, these the two true outcomes, I would say.
Sam Hilliard. No, I mean, dude, this guy is the best of that. I'm not comping Emmanuel Rodriguez to Sam Hilliard or anything like that. The thing that struck me was the staying power in center. Like I asked you, I was like, doesn't this guy make sense in a corner because he's got 70 grade pop? And you were like, nah, man, it can work in center field. I am curious. We did a mailbag on the Just Baseball show, and we were asked about surprise deadline candidates to move. And I said Byron Buxton, because this kind of makes a lot of sense in that lineup. And why wouldn't you get out of the $30 million or $40 that you owe Buxton over the next 3 to 4 years and replace that with Emmanuel Rodriguez and another guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this episode? I think it makes sense. And there are very few boxes left for him to check. The problem is it may take a while for him to check all the boxes because you got to play games to check boxes.
Yeah. And that's the hurdle. But he got up to AAA, and then before they kind of shut it down again, because I think he was dealing with that thumb issue. But to do what he did in double and AAA as a 21-year-old, I mean, it's really impressive stuff. And it really does just come down to playing more consistently. He's got some outlier numbers in terms of the data, where, I mean, we're talking about a chase rate that was below 10% in 47 games and a 90th percentile exit velocity that was nearly 110. So, I mean, that's just outlier stuff from the left side, where you're going to be able to put him in center field too. One of my biggest boom or bust prospects here, where, I mean, I think at this point, if it doesn't work out, I think it's more likely that it's injury related than hit tool related, because I think this guy can strike out 32% of the time and still be a valuable big leaguer. And there's very, very, very few players who can do that. Number 18, Jasson Dominguez. And it was difficult comparing these two players, to be honest, because Dominguez has dealt with a little bit of his own injury issues as well. And his defense is just weirdly regressing. Like, I've seen him play better defense than he is playing right now. But I think the moving around a little bit, some guys will tell you that have played a lot of center field that the corner can almost be more difficult for them. I think that's kind of what's happening with Dominguez right now, where the corner is just a different read and it's been more difficult. But I do want to make it clear here, and it's kind of similar to the Kobe Mayo conversation that we've had. Dominguez did not have a bad 2024. It was disappointing because he was hurt and he got ragdolled a little bit up and down from the bigs and the minor leagues. But when he was playing, this dude slashed 314, 376, 504 in the minor leagues to 880 OPS. He was 21 for the entirety of the season. He ran a 90th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles per hour, and the contact rates have been above average. What made him a no-brainer top 15 prospect for me last year, or at the end of last year, was the numbers that we saw. The contact rates were comfortably above average. The right-handed swing came along comfortably. He's still fast. He gives you value on the base paths. He got hurt last year. He didn't succeed in weird, small, kind of random samples in the big leagues. He was not bad. There was nothing that detracted from any of the beliefs that he can be the player that we talked about, other than maybe the defense and where that's gone. That's the only side of it. But offensively, like, do you see him any different now?
Yeah, agree to disagree. I thought that one game cameo in Williamsport was really important for him, and he failed that
Yeah.
test. So I was a little shocked to see him inside the top 70. He is really young and really good, and he is more well-rounded than I could have ever imagined. And I want to hang out on the corner maybe being tougher than center thing, because just think about the flight path of a baseball. You can see it sitting from your seat in any ballpark. You can see it in the outfield. You can see it if you're sitting behind home plate. These things peel when they get into the corners, like especially if they're not headed for the gap. I mean, these guys need to work with the tail of a ball if it's hit the other way, or maybe like even the knuckling of a line drive if it's hit right at you to the pull side. In center, it feels like a lot of the flight path is true. Like there's really nothing going on in terms of the baseball dancing. But in the corner, that can be tough. And I talked to, it's funny to use this example, but like Ji-Hwan Bae with the Pirates, who has struggled when he's been at the big league level. He played second, short, center, left. And I asked him, what's the most fun one to play? He said left, because it's the most challenging. It's just an entirely different read. So I think you give an athlete like this a season to learn different reads in a corner outfield spot, he's going to improve in the corner outfield.
And just to build on that, he's made in the minor leagues 239 games in center, 58 games in a corner. So it's not even close to the experience of being able to get those reads, see the ball. Like, he's going to get better. Is he going to be good? I don't know. Maybe not. But he's a good runner with a 70 arm. He's going to be fine there. He's not going to be a total liability like he looks like right now. And it's just, it's unfortunate. This is just one of those where people are just fatigued of his name. Like, the amount of people that were commenting like, oh my gosh, he's still a prospect. He has less major league at bats than a lot of other guys on this list, including Dylan Cruz. He's not really played that much at the upper levels at all. And it's more of a testament to him that he flew through the minor leagues the way that he has, despite being a guy that had swing and miss concerns in the early going, had, I thought, swing mechanics that were wonky when I saw him in low A, rectified those so quickly, which is what the Yankees help guys do, but also testament to Dominguez and his work ethic. Yeah. If he's able to rectify his swing from two sides of the plate while flying through the minor leagues, you don't think he can rectify his defense in left field at Yankee Stadium? I think he'll be okay. Yeah, I think it'll be fine. But just to put into perspective here, like what kind of player he can be, I do ultimately think it's going to be the power over hit as he ages, especially from the right side. But this is a guy that should be able to put together, I think, average contact rates at the highest level. And I don't think, especially from the left side, I think it could be above average from the left side. The approach, he got a little aggressive last year, but I think that was him trying to make up for lost time, because we've seen him be patient and through stretches, even in Double A as a younger guy there and things like that. That's something I want to see him continue to build on, though. but this is a guy that can hit 30 plus home runs in a corner and get you bags and do a lot of fun things. So I still think this is without a doubt a top 20 prospect in the game. And I think people are going to, I wouldn't say surprise. I don't think Dominguez can surprise anybody because he's in front of your face all the time, whether you like it or not, because Yankees prospect and people either going to hate on him or love him.
Yeah.
I think this is a guy that is going to remind people that it wasn't just all hype. And I think he's going to have a nice year this year.
Yeah.
Get to number 17 here, who I definitely think is going to have a nice year this year. Now that he has runway, it's Drake Baldwin. The Atlanta Braves are in a great spot when, you know, your all-star catcher, who did have a down year last year, and Sean Murphy goes down, and you can immediately plug in one of the best catching prospects in the game, who is very big league ready. It's not one of those, oh, well, let's rush him up here. No, it was more of a conversation of, man, what are we going to do if what do you think the Braves should do with Drake Baldwin if Sean Murphy's playing well and he's healthy? Because that guy does not need to be in AAA. I mean, Baldwin is another one where I don't know where all the other rankings have him, but to be honest, I don't know how you could have this guy outside of your top 30 prospects with what he showed. I understand that he came out of nowhere a little bit more relative to other prospects, but just look at the sample size last year. We're working with a lot of games that this guy played and at the upper levels, and he only got better and better and better as the year went on, and he was phenomenal in AAA. The underlying batted ball data, too, points towards him potentially having more in the tank. I got a little concerned about this guy being a average big league catcher, and I think he could be a borderline all-star catcher if it all works out.
You don't see how he can be outside the top 30 prospects in baseball?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Pipeline has him at 63, BA has him at 53, and Prospectus has him at 37.
Actually?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I just
your rebuttal.
50% hard hit rate.
Yeah.
From a left-handed hitting catcher who is a good defender. Like at the very worst, this is going to be average defense.
Is the rebuttal 1 year wonder? Like that's my only question. I think it was just 24. I don't know.
I get, and maybe that's what the counterpoint is. I think you also look at the slash line. And you're like, oh, well, it was cumulatively over the year. He didn't even break an 800 OPS. So maybe that's part of it. But the underlying markers are crazy. And just watch this guy play. He's an athletic catcher with a sweet swing from the left side who doesn't chase, like really controls his ABs well, posted above average contact rates, and is, I think, scraping the surface of his power potential. Like he puts the ball on the ground a little bit too much. But this is a 90th percentile of 106, and it got better and better and better as the year progressed. The floor ceiling combo here is just excellent. It was funny. I got a text from Dylan Short, who does a great job covering the Braves and has a great talk show on. I wish I had the exact radio station off the dome, but there's so many letters in every radio station. But listen to Dylan Short if you're an Atlanta folk who likes to keep up with the Braves. I love that guest spot. But he texted me and he's like, what's the comp for Drake Baldwin? And I was like, I don't really know, but I was looking at the offensive numbers and what I think can be. And I see a lot of Brian McCann, maybe a little bit less defense, because McCann had some years where he was superb. But if he's giving you some Brian McCann type of production with defense that is still average or a little bit better than that, like Brian McCann hit 20 home runs or more for like 8 straight years. I think that's what Baldwin's just going to do if it works out the way that I think it can.
680 the fan.
680 the fan.
680 the fan, home of Dylan Short and Atlanta Braves baseball. I think it's a really interesting conversation to be had. What happens when Murphy gets healthy? He's got that cracked rib and he's going to miss the first month or so, it sounds like, of the season. And Baldwin will be the opening day catcher. I think in the interest of Atlanta maybe getting cheaper and knowing what they have in Baldwin, I know they just extended Sean Murphy, but it would make little sense to me to option Baldwin if he's awesome in the first month. Now, if he's not, I understand optioning Baldwin and just letting him play every day in AAA again this year, and then you deal with the blocked thing maybe going into 2026 or at the end of 25, and you carry him for the month of September. But if they have their catcher of the future here in Drake Baldwin, and you firmly think they do, that Murphy deal, it's large, but it's not one that you can't move. I could absolutely see them floating Murphy. A lot of teams are begging for a catcher like Sean Murphy, and I think they would pay that price tag for Sean Murphy. So it's crazy to think that he could make an all-star backstop expendable, but that is the talent that Drake Baldwin has.
100%. And maybe when Murphy comes back because of the injuries and stuff, I know this one was a fluky one hit by pitch, but they timeshare it a little bit as they try to iron all that out.
Yeah.
And you can find ways maybe to get guys in the lineup a little bit more. But with Baldwin, last thing here, final 50 games of the season, 292, 394, 486 slash line is 880 OPS. He also only struck out 17% of the time, walked 15% of the time, and had an xWOBA over 400. I mean, he had some bad batted ball luck, if anything, that you could argue. We're going to get to prospect number 16 in a moment here. Before that, our first break. All right. Number 16 is Carson Williams of the Tampa Bay Rays. And I just watched this guy hit spring breakout, hit a ball that was shot out of a freaking cannon. Like, it was one of those where if you were talking to somebody, like you weren't watching the game for a second, you jump out of your chair. Like, what was that? That's what Carson Williams can do. The thing is he's going to make his living off of these defensive plays that you're seeing if you're watching on YouTube. He is a wizard with the glove, and it was really cool to talk to him. And that was an interview that we only did a couple months ago, so definitely go check that out if you're a Rays fan. Honestly, if you're just a baseball fan, period, because Carson has a really interesting story of just being a guy that was kind of like meh about baseball. Like, he liked it, but it wasn't his priority. He was surfing. He was enjoying himself in California. If I was a GM, honestly, that would make me want to draft a guy more. Knowing that once you draft him, he's going to be committed, and Carson's been very, very committed. But the guys who just baseball was one of their things through their high school life, and Carson didn't even really have a ton of favorite players. He didn't even watch a lot of baseball. Now he watches a ton of it, and he talked about that. And now he's a junkie with it. But it was kind of just one of the things that he enjoyed, and then he realized, wait, I could be a star at this. And we've seen the maturation and development in that regard, though, too. And the Rays have talked about that. Like, several of their front office guys in scouting, player development have said, hey, we're so excited about this guy because he is learning so many nuances about the game as he's going and realizing, wow, like, I relied on these things with my natural ability, but now if I can do this and that, what can I ultimately become? I think we saw some of that last year, right, man? Like, we saw the approach improve drastically, and that was another huge part of the conversation that was fascinating to me, hearing how he has really overhauled his approach and leveraged that into drawing more walks last year, cutting down the K rate, and being one of the only hitters that was consistently productive in the Southern League.
Yeah. This
guy doesn't need to hit much to be a 4.5 WAR player.
And he does hit much. Like, that's the thing. And this guy, I know he struck out a lot, but in terms of sheer offensive output, he's been really darn good at each step. And I'll just walk you through what he did in low A, and then pretty much in high A in 23, and then in double A in 24. In 2022, he played 113 games, a 124 WRC plus. In 2023, for the most part in Bowling Green, high A, 115 games, he climbed it to a 130 WRC plus. And then 115 games again in double A this past year, he climbed it to a 142 WRC plus. So in terms of WRC plus, this guy has gone from 124 to 130 to 142. In terms of walk rate, 10.9 to 11.7 to 11.5. And in terms of K rate, this is the big one for me, 32% to 31% to 28.5%. He's gotten better every single year while he moves up a level, and he's going to be in AAA this year. I would expect if patterns hold, he gets even better and the K rate lowers to like the mid-20s. And there is nothing to say that this guy is not ready to be the franchise cornerstone and shortstop for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Absolutely. And the fact that he has plus power that he's already getting into, I mean, he elevates consistently. My one concern is the swing can get a little long, a little armsy, and he's gonna punch. Like, it's gonna happen. But that's why I'm so pumped about the approach improvements and the ability to hit secondaries that has improved. He doesn't need to dominate against secondaries because he dominates against fastballs. if you can hit hangers, I know I talk about this a lot, but if you demolish fastballs and hit hangers and you're a phenomenal shortstop, it's similar but different to the Emmanuel Rodriguez conversation where he could be a 3 true outcome plus defender at shortstop. And that sounds great to me. Where if that's your first baseman, then it's like, he's got to really run into those homers. Man, this guy could have a 710 OPS his first season, and he could back into 3+ WAR. So you imagine what it can be when he's hitting 25, 30 home runs if that all comes together, which is very obviously in the tank. And I really believe in the makeup of this dude. And still just 21 years old, by the way, too, which is a really wild part of it. Where, I mean, if he spends the entire year in AAA, which I think he may end up spending most of the year there, just knowing the way the Rays operate and with the Ha-Seong Kim signing and all of that, there's no big deal. And he can make his debut 22 years old and be that face of the franchise type of piece if it all works out. But regardless, be a solid building block for you at a premium position for a long time. And the glove is just so much fun to watch. He's going to be a human highlight reel.
Yeah.
Number 15. Here he is, Mr. Cam Smith. We've talked about this, but when we're watching the swing, and there was an open side clip that I just came up on my feed the other day where he shot one the other way. Astros prospect, by the way, acquired from the Cubs and the Kyle Tucker deal. I watched the swing and I was like, how did people look at this guy at FSU? Swing was exactly the same. And not say, oh, I need this guy with my number 8 pick or my number 7 pick or my number 9 pick or my number 11 or 12 or 13. It's so simple. It's so powerful. And do you remember what we were talking about around the time of the draft where what was the knock on Cam Smith's swing or the concern around Cam Smith's swing?
Was it too long?
No. People were saying it was too stiff. And I kept saying, don't mistake still for stiff.
Yeah. What would stiff mean there? Because his hands are like, I mean, he sets up in just a perfect way, whereas the barrel's pretty much perpendicular. But like, I don't really understand what's stiff about this. It's just simple.
So when guys aren't moving sometimes, and they're big, strong guys, and he's strong, people are afraid that being so stagnant, and it's fair, like it happens, but being so stagnant can result in you just being a little too muscly and you're not going to be as fluid with your moves. You're not going to be as adjustable with your moves. And that happens, but that is not the case with Cam Smith. So when you're stiffer like that, you're not going to have the adjustability. And the thing is we were looking at swings time and time again at Florida State where he's getting the pitches up and out, down and in, tough spots, wherever it may be. He's getting the barrel to him. He is malleable, but a lot of times very physical and very simple is not usually coinciding with malleable. But that's why you got to look at each player in a vacuum and then go from there. We're seeing that Cam Smith's hit tool is much better than I think people were expecting. But the contact rates should have kind of told us that in college. I know college contact rates are different, but I was looking at the out of zone contact rates for guys that are stiffer. His out of zone contact rates were nowhere near those types of players. And then just watch him move as an athlete. People were saying, oh, he might move off a third. He looks great there. And he's such a good athlete that, as your name tag says here, they might try this guy in right field. And guess what? I think he can play out there. I don't know. The reads might be shaky. Who knows? But he has sneaky wheels. He has a rocket for an arm. And he's a freaking natural athlete. So I think the combination here of simplicity swing-wise and just it's also like how quickly you can get to top speed where he's not moving. He doesn't need to load and have all of these big moves, but he can go from where his hands are to slot to violent bat speed so easily, so simply that's the kind of guy that I think can actually make these aggressive leaps. And I think that's why we've seen him do it because the whole art of pitching and what big league pitchers do better than any other level of pitcher and why it's so hard to get up to the big leagues is throw off your timing, get you out of your rhythm. It's really hard to throw a hitter like Cam Smith off his timing. And most hitters that would have an operation like Cam Smith would not be able to produce plus bat speed because they don't have anything going on. They need something to create some momentum, something to get them in rhythm. Cam doesn't need that. And he's going to generate as much bat speed as just about anybody without that crazy movement or even without much movement at all. That's a scary sight. We talk about guys like this all the time. Think about Gunnar Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Still too violent. I think you can make the case with most of the top hitters in baseball are still too violent. And that's, I think, some of the scariest things when you look at a hitter.
And oh, by the way, like it seems like he's fine in right, to be honest. And I'm watching another guy in left who's probably ticketed for Cooperstown that's really struggling in left field. So the Astros may dive headfirst into just a corner outfield experiment, flanking Jake Myers. We'll see if Chas McCormick plays a lot. But if the opening for Cam is in right, they're going to go ahead and do it. And oh, by the way, I know this guy wasn't top 100. Have you seen what Zach DeCenzo has been doing this spring?
I know. He was also a just missed that I forgot to put on that just missed article.
So he just missed the just missed.
He just missed the just missed. He was on the end of season top 100, and I watched him struggle in the corner, and I that was a guy whose swing looks stiff, to be honest. But he looks
really good right now.
He rakes. He's going to run into his homers.
Astros got some guys, man. Like it seems like they're remedying this Christian Walker injury really well right now with a couple of young guys.
Yep. And I mean, if both those guys are up there and helping here and there, I mean, they're in a pretty good spot. But the Smith long-term position, third base, I think he's going to be a good defender there.
Yep.
Without a problem. He looked really comfortable already in the early going professionally.
Yep.
Real quick before we move on to the next guy, let me pull up Cam Smith's spring training stats, just because I think it's important to just show how he has not slowed down pretty much at all.
Yeah.
419, 500, 871 is what I got. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got that.
13 hits in 13 games, 4 homers. I think he's leading the Astros in every offensive category.
Except deck bats. I think that's DeCenzo's.
There you go. But it's exciting. I mean, this could end up looking like a nice trade for the Astros, given you're trading one of the best hitters in the game. But it was only 1 year of him.
Yep.
14. He's the only guy in the draft class that is going to have the slight edge over Cam Smith, and that could change, to be honest. We'll see. But the track record of Travis Bazzana gave him the edge there. And I mean, the Guardians, they're going to get this guy up at the show probably sooner rather than later. I feel like with Bazzana, people have kind of quickly been like, I wouldn't say like harsh on him, but I have seen some people eager to maybe invalidate the clear-cut number one pick that he was. I know Weatherholt was a conversation as well, and I thought he could have easily been. I do think Weatherholt's not that far off, but I think it's also important to note Bazzana has some frame-defying pop that pairs with a great feel to hit, an elite approach, and decent wheels and makeup that is going to almost ensure that he is always searching for the way to get the most out of his ability.
I think people just saw the slug drop from 911 to 396 and they got nervous that it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, that's it. It was just, with Wood now, this little guy can't hit home runs anymore.
Of course his slugging percentage was going to drop 600 points. Who are we kidding?
I watched him hit a ball 443 feet, albeit it was in Arizona. That sounded like a bomb went off.
But nobody 5'11", 195 should be hitting a ball that far, regardless of if you're playing at Coors, in Arizona, in Cleveland, wherever you may be. Nobody should be hitting a ball like that.
I think there's the one thing to monitor is it is a big leg kick. And I don't think he has a problem of making it work in terms of surviving at the big league level. That's not the problem. I'm just thinking about the most successful version of Bazzana is probably a guy that's close to plus in the contact rate department, or definitely plus in the swing decision department, and then above average power. That's where you see the all-star Bazzana. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder with that big leg kick, if harder, sharper, late-breaking sliders can give him some trouble. You got to give him time to see if he can make that work. But maybe there's a world where he makes a Zach Neto type of adjustment, where he's still able to get into that backside, still able to generate similar power, but doesn't need such a big move that may be harder to control. The thing is I have all the confidence in the world that if Travis Bazzana needs to make that adjustment, he will. I don't know if anybody's more responsive to themselves than Travis Bazzana.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on it? Like, he's going to play a fine second base. I've always thought about the idea of maybe running him out in center. I just don't know if they want to do that because they want him in the show sooner rather than later. You traded Andres Jimenez as well. It seems like they're just not even going to experiment with that. I'm fine with that. I'd love to see stolen bases continue to become a little bit of a bigger part of his game, and I think it will.
Yeah. I just think he should just be the everyday second baseman for them. I think Juan Brito has a little bit more defensive versatility that you can use as a utility guy. I also think they're not entirely sold on, Brito being a big part of their future, but they just used the number 1 overall pick and they paid full slot for Travis Bazzana. Didn't they pay full slot, or was it?
No, they got savings, but I mean,
it's just a ludicrous number. I don't think really any number 1 overall pick should be getting full slot anymore, because it's like, what's the difference between 8.5 and 10 if you're going to get up to the big leagues in a year?
Exactly.
But I do think that he should just be the everyday second baseman for the Cleveland Guardians by the All-Star break. And I think that, if he's the 6 hitter for Cleveland this year, he's one of the better young 6 hitters in baseball. Yeah. And then he can elevate to a 2 or not 3. He can elevate to their 2 hole at some point very soon. And I'm just thinking about Quan leading off, Bazzana in the 2 hole, and J-Ram hitting 3rd. That's really exciting stuff.
That's really, really dynamic too. And the last thing I'll say in Bazzana to get there, it's just going to be watch how he's handling these sliders. I think the desire to want to go to the pull side to do damage is going to also take him off of those sliders from time to time. So if he's able to stay on those, I think that's pretty much the only thing that he needs to do. 13, Samuel Basallo of the Baltimore Orioles. Basallo, by the way, I wouldn't even say he made a major adjustment, but there's a slight change that I see that I absolutely love, and I think it could be the final piece. If you're watching on YouTube, you just saw it. The final piece that kind of gets him to the next level of his potential. He has that load where he's pulling his hands back and getting coiled, and the hands kind of turn with the knob towards the catcher as he turns into that back hip. But it used to be a little bit of a later move that could be a bit more rushed. And now I've really seen it in spring training where he's starting it early and it's a slow and controlled gather as he pulls it back. And I think it gives him a lot more rhythm. And I think it also allows him to repeat his timing a lot more easily and get to his spot where I think it's going to help him be a lot more consistent. Because if you look at the one thing with Basallo, expands a little bit too much, and there's a little bit too much in zone whiff. There's a ton of damage outside of the zone. He had more out of zone home runs than anybody in the minor leagues. But that at times would look a little bit rushed, and I think that's where the ground ball rate would creep up. This slower, earlier move, I think, is going to allow him to see the ball earlier. I think it's going to allow him to get his best swing off more consistently, and it just looks amazing. So I'm expecting an uptick in power, even game power, that is, from Basallo this year. And it might be one of those things where I'm like, oh, shoot, maybe I should have had him a couple spots higher, whatever, 13 versus 11, whatever it may be. Yeah. But I do like what I'm seeing from Basallo.
It gives him probably more time to just kind of ID pitches and make a decision or not, right? Just helps pitch rack. Obviously, it's going to help the flow through the zone and all that. But I'm just thinking like, okay, I got to worry about, getting my hands here. And, all of a sudden 95, it's not like you have much reaction time at 95, but if 95 is upstairs and you've been worried about your hands for the last quarter second, you're going to have less time to make an executive decision. So he's just got more time to make decisions as well.
It's smooth. It's like buttery too, when you just watch how he's able to do it. And I think it's an easier way to focus on repeating those moves, where instead of like, I got to load these hands and go, it's I'm on my way. I know exactly where I'm going to be. And then boom, it's like slow, fast. And slower, I like that build up.
Slower is always better in terms of repeatability. Like slowest you can work before violence, the better.
A lot of guys can't do that though, because when do you start it? Then if you're starting it and then you're not in your slot in time, then you feel rushed. Basallo would always hit that way, but he was starting it later and then it was making it need to happen quicker. So now he's starting it earlier and he can still have the time to get to his spot. We'll see if it's something that can get disrupted timing wise, but if it doesn't, I love where he's headed in that regard. And I think he's going to have a nice offensive season and should be up sooner rather than later. The question is the defense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what held him back from the number one catcher spot here. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be a 45 grade defender, but the arm is great. The receiving is not good, and it really hasn't been. I'm hoping he can get better. He's got time. He's super young, but I do think that that's going to hold him back ultimately from like a WAR perspective. Yeah. But we're talking about a guy that can hit 30 plus. He's not going to walk much, and that part is tough because you'd like to see that, but I think he's going to be able to just do enough damage. It's a Rafi Devers type of offensive profile where he's going to whiff and chase a little bit, but he's going to get to pitches outside of the zone and hit them so hard and do damage so consistently that it's going to work. And I think that's what you can look at. You can hope that he cuts down on the chase a little bit more, but I do think he's the closest to the Rafi Devers type of offensive profile, where you may not check the KPIs, the key performance indicators that you like to see, the end zone contact and whatever, but you just know that the guy's going to be productive. It's the defense. And if the receiving can get closer to average, then I think you could easily dream on him being one of the best catchers in baseball.
Is KPI a finance term?
Is it?
I have no idea. I'm not a finance guy. KPI just sounds like
you're asking the least finance guy of all time here, I think. But
I don't know. Like I know ROI is a finance term. I know what that stands for, but like KPI also sounds like one. PWC, I know that's an accounting term or something.
Key performance indicators, KPI.
I like that.
12, Matt Shaw. He checks a lot of KPIs. He wore his debut patch in Tokyo, and I want that card more than I want anything on planet Earth right now, I think, because that's cool as hell. But this dude, I mean, thank goodness he's on the opening day roster, and there shouldn't have been any question about it. I also think part of the reason why the Cubs were willing to move a Cam Smith was because of the presence of Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw, though, the biggest development for me last year was the defense. I had very little confidence that he was going to develop into an average third baseman, and he's right there. He looks like he can be an average third baseman. The bat was never a concern. I mean, what he can do in terms of blending field to hit with loud exit velocities and an improving approach. He was aggressive, very aggressive in 22-23, and then cut the chase rate down significantly last year where he was in the 25-ish% chase rate range, which is fine. He was north of 30, I think, in 2023. So those were all the things you wanted to see. He hits the ball hard to all fields. He's tough to punch out. He's going to be a good player for a long time with the defense where it's at third base now. It's just a really nice blend of good field to hit plus power, plate discipline that's gotten better, and he can motor too. And that's probably one of the more underrated aspects of his game.
He just seems like a freaky athlete. And I mean, freaky athlete in turn validates him getting borderline good at third base already. And in Tokyo, I know it's a 2-game sample. He looked really good over at third base in Tokyo. He made that diving play to end an inning in game 2. And I mean, it just seemed like everything he did over there was natural enough. And I don't know like how much this guy actually needs to think about the hyper mechanics of baseball to be really good at baseball. And those are the guys that I love more than anybody.
Yeah. I mean, he adjusted. He's a very unorthodox hitter. There's no doubt about that. But he ends up just getting to a spot that totally works. And that's why I'm not too worried about the mechanics where he starts pretty much already stacked on the backside.
You know what the setup
big
looked
leg
like?
kick that I am interested to see if that leg kick is manageable. But I just think he's going to be one of those outlier guys that can manage it. But the difference is he gets to a spot where he is stacked into his back leg. His hands are already in his slot. So it looks like there's a lot of moving parts, but he pretty much presets himself where he wants to be. And the leg kick is totally malleable where sometimes if he's rushed, he will make it shorter. When he wants to get his best swing off, it'll be bigger. Like he's a kind of guy that can change things in the box at a whim.
Without the leg kick, you know what it looks like? A young Eloy Jimenez. That new setup looks like a young Eloy where like people were so excited about what Eloy could do in terms of the power department. He was just a natural hitter that was so stacked on the backside and then he would just let it rip.
Just let the natural explosion and rotational ability. And that's another, it's kind of like the Cam Smith conversation. A lot of guys that if they're starting stacked on the backside and close to their slot, it's going to be hard to let it rip from there because you don't have much momentum. You don't really have that building point. And you're just going to, if you're starting there, you're just going to push out of it. So the leg kick for Shaw, I think, is more to just keep him back. It's similar to Baldwin. Baldwin has this big leg kick, but it's not really to get his weight there. It's just to keep his weight there. So I think it's easier from that lens, because if you're feeling rushed, then you can just tone it down. Whereas other guys that use that big leg kick, I think for them, it's getting them into their backside because they can't get into it without it. If you can get there already and feel that tension already, you're going to be able to generate force with little effort. And I do think those are the guys that are really just doing the leg kick to keep themselves back. And that's why Shaw demolishes velocity. And then also is adjustable to secondary stuff quite well. Like, it's really hard to beat him in any which way. And I think that's a testament to his hitting ability. But I've watched at bats where he looks sped up on the first swing. Yeah. And then the next leg kick is lower. And I asked him about that, and he's like, yeah, sometimes I don't even really notice it. It's almost like my mind is recalibrating itself. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm going to believe in you forever now. So like, he's just got it. He's just got it like that. And I have little concern that he's going to be able to hit enough at the major league level. But just to put some context to the velocity thing, against 92 plus last year, he had an 880 OPS. Against 93 plus last year, he ran a contact rate in the zone over 85%. So, and walked more than he struck out. He's going to hit it hard to all fields. I'm excited. This is my rookie of the year pick over Sasaki. I've said that, and I stand by it. Number 11, Andrew Painter, who we finally got to see make his return in the Arizona Fall League. And the Philadelphia Phillies, I know, are very excited to have this guy back into the fold. I actually got to go watch him. There was a video clip that was just showing. That's where I actually got to go see him. Was on the backfields. He threw some live ABs to Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott hit a double into the gap, so I think he's cooked. I think Painter's cooked. Mm-hmm. But no, they've been very careful with him, and understandably so, because he's a monster of a pitching prospect and has all the potential in the world. The timing of things was unfortunate, where they tried to delay or fight off the Tommy John surgery, right? And then that ended up resulting in him just missing what was like 2 full seasons, essentially. Yeah. So it feels like we haven't seen him in forever, but he reminded us just how good he is in the Arizona Fall League. The final outing that we saw from him, 2 2/3 innings, 6 strikeouts there. And as they're being cautious through spring training, it looks like it's more of the same from him, where he's filling up the zone. The fastball's in the upper 90s. The slider is disgusting. And the changeup continues to be an underrated offering that I wish he would just throw more.
Yeah. Peter asked me a prospect question on the Just Baseball show. And he said, the way that you talk about Andrew Painter makes me think that you think he's the best pitching prospect in baseball. And pre-Tommy John, I'd probably end up saying yes. Like, yeah, healthy. I know we haven't seen Painter throw a full season after Tommy John, but 2022 Andrew Painter compared to the other pitchers that we're going to talk about, right? Like a Jackson Jobe and a Roki Sasaki. I think you can make the argument Painter's the better pitching prospect of those three.
I think it's fair given the age, right? Because Sasaki's 23, 2022 Painter was 19 years old, averaging 97 from a 6'7" frame, and
wasn't walking anyone and threw to a 1.56.
He did 69% overall strike rate that year. His slider, he landed for a strike 66% of the time, and the changeup he just started to introduce and was dotting it. So yeah, I think you can make that case. The thing I'm interested to see is just the fastball shape. Guys like that off of TJ, sometimes it flattens out and it takes some time. So, over the top guy, that's the one concern I have. It'll be okay because it's upper 90s, but we're just talking about the difference between maybe it playing like a 60 or a 70. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I want to monitor. And then please throw the freaking changeup more. It's a great pitch. I understand the slider is elite, but the changeup's great. But just for perspective, in 2022, 39% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate in 22 appearances. He only gave up 5 home runs. It's 155 strikeouts, it's 25 walks, 5 home runs, 67 total hits in 401 plate appearances against him. Opponents slashed 181, 239, 272. Yeah. I mean, ceiling wise, he's up there with anyone. And he's still just 21, too, by the way. He's going to turn 22 in a few weeks. So we haven't seen him in a while, but he's got all the time in the world.
He's flat out special, man. I don't know what their move is with him when minor league, actually affiliated baseball opens up. I would assume AA for a little bit, and then he would go to AAA, and then he just kind of hangs out in AAA until I know the ETAs this year, maybe September. They have 5 to get them through, however long they need to get through. And I don't think that you should rush a guy coming off a Tommy John surgery that is only 21 years old if injury does come about. But I think by September, there's going to be nothing left for him to do in the minor leagues.
I agree. And I think if somebody goes down and the timing is right where they ease him in, I imagine they're going to be ramping him up in a way that it's like he's available if needed to plug in June, July. Like I could see the Skeens type of ease in, but if the rotation's full and everybody's fine, then you're just going to keep managing him very carefully and go from there. But I do wonder if they manage his innings in a way that he will be available at the end of the year if needed. And I'm sure Painter would probably rather it be that way too, where he's going 4 innings, maybe a little bit longer through the year than he wanted to, so that he can be available to potentially help the team in the back end of the year. Because this is the best number 6 starter in Major League Baseball, and he's never thrown a Major League Baseball pitch.
Correct.
Maybe the Rays have a better technically. I don't know, but I'll stand by that comment.
Who's the 6?
If you start going through the Rays rotation, they're quote unquote 6th might be a disgusting arm, I'd imagine.
Maybe the Dodgers. The 6th is Rasmussen, or like you could say Littell. Littell could be the 6th. I think I'm taking Andrew Painter over Littell.
Yeah, you can make it still a very compelling case that Andrew Painter's the best number 6 by a mile without throwing a major league pitch.
Although Kershaw might be the 6th for the Dodgers.
Yeah. So. Who's double his age.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the top 10 here in a moment. Before that, another break. Number 10. Dalton Rushing of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Dalton Rushing, catcher, left fielder sometimes when the Dodgers feel like it, but he's really a catcher, and they're kind of putting the left field thing on ice for a little bit just to continue to have him hone in on the defensive side of things behind the dish and keep him fresh there, because I think, if Will Smith goes down, he's very clearly going to be the guy that plugs right in immediately. But Rushing was one that, as I alluded to in the top of the episode, I think people were most surprised about to see in the top 10 because he's older. He's 24 years old. He turned 24 in, I think, a month ago. But in his age 23 season, he absolutely torched the upper levels. And, demolished the Texas League and then torched at AAA. I understand that's the PCL, but the batted ball data is crazy. Also, defensively, has become a really solid defender. And I got a chance to talk to him in spring training last year, and he basically said, I'm not even worrying about hitting right now. I am focused 100% on my catching defense. That was also when he's getting a chance to catch bullpens of all of those arms and just getting the feedback there from a receiving perspective, how you're calling games, everything. But also the catch and throw has gotten so good to the point where he did throw out 30% of base stealers. And when he's focusing on the defensive ability while also experimenting out and left, he put up a ridiculous offensive season where he slashed 266, 379, 500 to 879 OPS. He struck out 21% of the time, walked 12.5% of the time. The batted ball data is crazy too. There's another guy that sub 20 chase rate, 17% chase rate, contact rate in the zone above 80%, and a 90th percentile exit velocity of 106.5 miles per hour, hard hit rate of nearly 50%. You're doing that while throwing out 30% of attempted base stealers. I got no questions. This is a guy that could be one of the better catchers in the game.
Only guy that agrees with you, because BA has him at 30, Pipeline has him at 30, Prospectus has him at 22. King Longenhagen of Fangraph has him at 8. Look at Eric, man. I hate doing the coach speak, like checking boxes thing, but he's checked every single box. And it's weird because I think the Dodgers are going to use him in a similar way to how they used Michael Busch. And I think he's a better player than Michael Busch was in the minor leagues, and catching really helps that. But this guy isn't even Rule 5 eligible until after this year. So they haven't burned an option yet. I could see them, if Will Smith is healthy for the entire year, just going with the Barnes backup thing. And if you need a second catcher after Barnes goes down, like Fiducia is still hanging out, right? So you could turn to a guy like that and you could effectively save Rushing, and then you add him to the 40 this offseason, and then you have 3 options to play with there. They signed Will Smith to a 10-year deal.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman's at first base. It's not like Will Smith is pivoting to first. And then, by the way, you've got a full-time DH on a 10-year deal. So there's nowhere for him to crack the lineup if it isn't in the corner outfield. But we'll see how they do this. I just want to see him get big league ABs because he's so deserving of those.
And beyond. Yeah, I mean, beyond deserving. And that's the tough spot for him is I'm surprised that they decided to put the left field thing on ice already.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because of that or they wanted him to be just ready defensively behind the dish because he really is the true backup. He's not going to be the backup in terms of who's catching on Sunday afternoon games, but he's the backup in the sense that if Will Smith goes down, I don't think they're rolling with Austin Barnes. That's where Dalton Rushing is being selected and added to the 40-man. So that's the interesting wrinkle in it. It's how consistently he's getting into his power too, though, where it's a 92-mile-per-hour average exit velocity.
Wow.
He elevates the ball at a 37%, or sorry, he only puts the ball on the ground at a 37% clip. So it's always going to be in the air, and that's why he hit 26 home runs. So if you're consistently hitting the ball hard in the air, you don't chase. You're posting average contact rates. By the way, against righties, 879 OPS. Against lefties, 881 OPS. You've now turned into at least an average defender. What's the hole to poke in Dalton Rushing's game?
There isn't one.
That's why he's a top 10 prospect to me.
Mic drop.
Actually, I had one more ready for the mic drop. Before we go into the next prospect, I want to take a second to discuss prospects who had an average exit velocity below or above 92 miles per hour, a chase rate below 18%, and hit 25 plus home runs last year. Okay, we're done with that segment. Let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is Colt Emerson of the Seattle Mariners. And I was actually just talking to Pat Monteverde, the Marlins organization, the other day. And Pat was out there in the Arizona Fall League and that Peoria team that I think was the worst team in the Arizona Fall League by a mile. He was talking about Emerson, though, and he said, this kid's going to be really freaking good, man.
Really?
He just was gushing about him. And it's funny because when I got out there, it was just after the Emerson crazy stretch. And we saw him kind of struggle for a little bit. And I think right after we left, he started swinging it great again. But, I mean, he was just gushing and gushing. And pitchers don't love to talk about it. They're hardly even paying attention sometimes to their own team hitters, especially in the Fall League. And Emerson was one of the younger guys out there. But Emerson's another guy that is just scraping the surface of his power potential. And that was what really catapulted him into the top 10 for me, is you saw a guy here that clearly has more room to add strength and has. He added about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle going into last year. And I still think is just scraping the surface of what he can tap into in terms of game power, because he, in his age 19 season, and he's still 19, by the way. It was really his age 18 season, I would say. I always wonder what the exact cutoff is. After the All-Star break, he turned 19. So it was really his age 18 season. Ran an average exit velocity of 89.5 miles per hour, which is comfortably above average. 90th percentile was 103. So he's not getting to the top end as much yet, but you're seeing him consistently hit the ball hard. And I love to see that. The swing is super smooth. I think there's some aspects of it that are reminiscent to Roman Anthony in terms of the fluidity and the way that he loads and the way that he kind of operates from the left side. And then you have a guy that also has plus plate discipline, above average contact rates, and he's progressing enough at shortstop where I think you can make a case that he can stick there. It may not be great, but if it's average and he's giving you all that he can give you offensively, it's exciting. It's just a matter of tapping into that game power more, I think.
Yeah. He looked physically strong when we were out there, but I don't know. So we got out there, I think, right after, and you stayed for a little bit longer than I did. We got out there right after he was on this insane stretch where he was just clocking doubles left and right. And then he went a little cold for a couple of days, and then he just got right back to it. I think I was there for the little cold stretch, and then you stayed for kind of the back end, like getting things right again. He interests me because he has dealt with some injury issues, right? And there have been several so far in his minor league career to this point.
Yeah, there's been a few.
So, like, when do you start to worry about that?
If it happens this year again.
Okay.
I would say so, because 19 now, and I think there was just some getting acclimated to pro ball. Maybe you getting thrusted into some high effort situations,
And you're doing it
and
every day. Like,
yeah.
it's the first time in his life that he's doing this literally every day.
So, but I'm with you. Like, they're and they have kind of been soft tissue, like hammy or whatever kind of things too. So I am definitely watching that. And if he misses some time early again this year, it's the same thing with Walker Jenkins. Walker Jenkins is hurt again this year. And we're going to talk about him like that. I don't want to slap that label on them, but it's where you start to say, hey, this is something that's been a theme here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something to monitor, especially when you're looking at a guy that you want to stick at shortstop or in center field, where it's going to be a little bit more of a physically demanding position. But the ground ball rate just a little bit too high. That's the one thing I just want to see him shore up. But such a smooth swing from the left side, such a good approach, does so many things well. I think this could be, you have the potential for above average hit, above average power, plus plate discipline from shortstop. Like, that's going to play quite well. And I'm excited for a full season where he's hopefully healthy here at high A, where, I mean, he has top prospect in baseball upside as well. I think all these guys do that we're going to talk about, but in terms of the guys that aren't going to graduate, but also are in the top 15 or top 10 before they even reach double A, says a lot about their talent. I think Emerson is right there.
Yeah.
Number 8, this guy's definitely right there. Zyhir Hope, another one where, I mean, people were like, oh, another Dodgers prospect. Speaking of what we saw in the fall league, I saw this guy take 2 of the most ridiculous swings I've seen somebody take in person. I watched him hit a ball 470, and then the next day is the one you're just seeing right now on the screen, that AB. One of the best battles I've seen in a while, left on left against a AAA arm, and then eventually rockets one 450, I think it was, at like 112 miles per hour. This guy was 19. He just turned 20. He was hurt a little bit last year, so that, I think, slowed the full-fledged breakout. But we talk about KPIs, right? This is a guy whose KPIs are in the same conversation as some of the best young players or just players in Major League Baseball. When we're talking about exit velocities in his age 19 season, chase rate in his age 19 season, it's up there. Like, it's going to be in the Tatis conversation. It's going to be, I'm not saying he's going to be those players, but when you have a 19-year-old who's putting up outlier exit velocities, who's a plus runner, who I think people are way too quick to say is not going to be a viable glove. I think he still has a chance to maybe prove he can play center, and is not chasing at all. And then you just look at the mechanics, talk about still to violent. This is still to violent. How is this guy not a top 20 prospect in baseball? I understand top 10 is a little aggressive, because I can hear the case that, okay, he hasn't played above low A yet, but he is polished beyond his years relative to other prospects you're going to see in low A.
And the interesting thing is nobody was expecting that. Like, they were expecting him to be a project that was kind of far off. And I know that there had to be some Dodger fans that saw the Michael Busch trade go down and they said, who? Like, who's coming back? Ferris at least looked decent in low A in Myrtle Beach, but who is this Zyhir Hope? He wasn't a first-round pick. He was an 11th round pick. Like, what did we just get? And you got a top 10 prospect in baseball. Who is the last prospect that would be considered like a big league disappointment that checked some of those key performance indicators?
I don't know. I would love to be able to pull that. It's got to be few, man.
So like guys at that low a level that are hitting the ball that hard and run really well, I would assume like Corbin Carroll might have checked some of those boxes.
He wasn't hitting the ball that hard. He still doesn't hit the ball that hard.
So Tatis was checking those boxes.
But Tatis was chasing more and whiffing more. Chordio wasn't hitting the ball that hard. No. And I'm not saying he's going to be better than those guys, to be clear, but it's just showing
like power speed combination. Where he's at already, this young of an age, it's getting close to unprecedented. It's probably not entirely unprecedented, but it's getting close.
It's pretty close.
Was Ellie up there?
Ellie De La Cruz would be there, but he was whiffing more and chasing more. Of course, more dynamic, more projection on those guys, whereas Hope is maxed out. But
but the max is fun. Like he's a really fun looking maxed out.
That's a good one though. Ellie is another great shout there. But that's the kind of EVs and stuff that we're seeing from him. Is I was trying to think about it before we recorded, just like who are some players that were putting that up at 19 years old, and it's hard to think about because either some of those guys were college guys or they blossomed a year later or 2 years later and just weren't doing these things at this age. And just to put in perspective, he played 100 games last year if you add in the fall league.
Yeah.
And this is a 19-year-old, and it was really his first full pro season. 43 batted balls, 105 plus miles per hour.
Whoa.
In 100 games for a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, you just imagine what that can be as he continues to tap into that power more consistently. We're talking about 12 batted balls north of 110.
Yeah.
And it's also with the plus approach that I think could be borderline plus, hard hit rate of 50%. He's good left on left, had a 900 OPS left on left. This is the player that I think could be the guy in minor league baseball this year. As long as the swing and miss doesn't creep in too much, he could be putting up some of the best numbers that we're seeing anybody put up. What do you think is a fair, successful season for Zyhir Hope this coming season?
Get to AA and an OPS in the low to mid 800s between high A and AA. I think he goes to Great Lakes. I would like to see 20 to 25 homers, which I think is doable over the course of 110 games if he plays 110 games. And I would like to see, like he hit 290. In 55 games, he hit 287 in low A. I would like to see 270 to 280 with 25 homers and maybe 20 bags.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm like looking at the EVs right now. By the way, he ran an average exit velocity of 92.6 miles per hour. Now, I know that this is not the major leagues.
Yeah, but that's Rushing, and Rushing's 5 years older.
It's harder. It's a half tick higher than Rushing. If you're looking at major league exit velocities, and again, I understand it's not the major leagues, but exit velocities are not usually the biggest problem in the major leagues. It's just being able to make the contact enough. Mm-hmm. That would put him 17th in Major League Baseball. Bobby Witt Jr. ran an average exit velocity of 92.7. And that's probably a guy that was putting up some of those those markers at that age. And he's not going to be Bobby Witt, but just for comparison's sake of the impact. Yeah. So if you're talking about if he's able to hover around that exit velocity part, and you imagine there's probably going to be a little bit more in there. As the ball comes in harder too, it's going to go out harder. He could have an average exit velocity around 93 miles per hour, and that would put him, if he's able to sustain that, that would put him in the top 1% of Major League Baseball. So that's why I think you can look at a guy like him and say the power is the ceiling is as high as it can possibly be. Yep. Number 7, Kevin McGonigle, Detroit Tigers. There's a lot of reasons why I think we are the high guys on McGonigle, but I think this is one of the most underrated still prospects in baseball because it is the most well-rounded, I think, I would say probably the most solid floor offensively that you're going to find in the top 100 list because he blends a feel to hit that is up there with just about anybody, with a fantastic approach, with the fact that he hasn't gotten into the game power yet because he's played a lot of his games in the Florida State League, but we've seen him pop a 113. And in his age 19 season, he popped to 113. So you imagine as he just continues to get into this power a little bit more, he walked nearly twice as much as he struck out. It was a 91% in zone contact rate, a 16% chase rate, and he sprays it all over the yard. If he has a 112, 113 in him as well, and he starts to get into that a little bit more frequently, this is almost like a perfect offensive profile.
And he's checking the tread video box as well. It wasn't tread, I don't think, but you saw that indoor live AB that he just massacred a baseball and it sounded like a bomb was going off. You had to see that.
Yeah, video. I mean, that's what he does.
That is what he does. Watching that video, just like the snippets that Peyton clipped together, he's got a swing. Tell me if this makes no sense, but he's got a swing that looks like he will never, ever swing and miss. Like it seems like he knows exactly where the barrel is going at all times. And it's so insanely balanced. He will get to anything. Now, these two pitches are middle that he hit, but like stayed back on a breaking ball, he swats it to right. Right here, left on left, he meets a pitch low and inside, swats it to right again. I mean, he just finds the barrel every single time.
And that's why he was able to slash 309, 401, 452 last year. And then you imagine as he gets more comfortable leveraging the advantage counts, just letting it eat when he's ahead, because we saw an example of that. And I don't like to put too much weight into one EV, but when you have a guy that looks like he's never going to swing and miss, pop a 112, 113, you're like, oh, okay, so that could be in there a little bit more. Mm-hmm. If he's hitting 20 home runs, he's going to be one of the better hitters in baseball because that's all he needs. So the fact that he's going to walk, the fact that you're going to struggle to punch him out, it's nearly 80% contact rate outside of the zone. So you're rarely going to get him to chase. And then the few times that he does chase, he's going to get to it, and he might even just still lace it for a hit. You're rarely going to get him to miss inside of the zone. He's fine left on left. He hit 296 against lefties too. I don't know how you get this guy out. And that's why I think he could lead the league in doubles. Like, that's where I think he's going to make his living, especially in Comerica. And then what really solidified him as a top 10 prospect for me is I think he could survive at short. Is it going to be great? But they don't really have anybody in his way. And he has worked really hard on his footwork there. He gets the ball out quick. I think he can be an average defender at short. And if he's an average defender there with that offensive profile, that's a really, really, really good player.
How about you do the Stott thing, or like the Joey Ortiz thing, where he gets up, he plays short. You probably need 2 years before Bryce Rayner gets there. So McGonigle plays short for 2 years, and then he pivots to second base or third base when Rayner is there more as a true shortstop.
And then you have a plush second baseman with all of the offensive ability. And I think you're dreaming on a Rayner, McGonigle, middle infield, where those two guys together would just be. I mean, that's the future. I
with Keith at first and Young at third. And Lorenzo catching. That's awesome.
It's really exciting stuff. So McGonigle is another one where I feel very safe about him having one of the best minor league seasons that we'll see this year.
Cool.
Number 6, not too much new on Dylan Cruz, but it comes down to one thing and one thing only for me with this guy. Hit sliders. Mm-hmm. He's going to play great defense. They don't need him in center right now, but kind of like the conversation that we just had. Once Jacob Young hits free, I don't know what the plan will be there, but I do think ultimately there's a point where they put Cruz in center, but if they don't, he could be a Gold Glove corner outfielder. And I know you loved watching him go about his business in center field last year in AAA, but demolishes fastballs, good approach. The base stealing has become a huge asset and a big part of his game. And it really just comes down to, can you handle the sliders? Because he's going to get spun to death this year. Yeah. And until he is relatively productive against him, it's just going to be what he continues to see.
Or can you not swing at sliders? That might be the big one to unlock. You know, if you don't check some contact boxes on sliders when guys are landing it for a strike, that's okay. You can survive that. But if you're chasing and you're sacrificing ABs on right sliders, then that's the issue. And the 60 plate discipline and the better than 20/20 vision would make me think that he can make that adjustment against sliders. The defensive thing I absolutely love. Like, I thought he was almost taking up too much ground in center field where it was borderline rude to corner outfielders. It was like, oh man, Dylan got to this one too. Is an easier play for the right fielder, but that's the kind of defender that he can be. And it's with the first step. I remember Trey Morgan just raving about Dylan Cruz's first step and Trey learning a little bit about the outfield from a Dylan Cruz. And I thought this guy was legit in center. To your point with Jacob Young, I have no idea how they're going to do that, but I mean, ride the hot hand with Young as long as you can, because he could actually swipe 50 bags in a given season. But Cruz, did you make the Marisnik comp, or was that somebody else? The Jake Marisnik possibility? Because Marisnik was like a top 10 prospect in baseball.
Yeah, I've used a Marisnik comp a couple of times, but usually I use that as like a Marisnik is like I don't even think it's fair to say that that's the worst case outcome for him at this point.
Marisnik, I understand what you're saying, but like Jake Marisnik carved out a 10-year major league career. 11
he's still kicking.
He's still kicking. Like 2023, pardon. Like he played 33 games with the Tigers, 9 with the White Sox, 4 with the Dodgers. Like, I know it hasn't really worked for Marisnik, and I'm not anticipating a 228 clip with a 666 OPS, but Jake Marisnik has accumulated 11.5 WAR in 11 major league seasons. And that is below the worst possible outcome for Dylan Cruz.
Exactly. Like that's why these types of players are always going to, like, you have a big leaguer no matter in the most catastrophic of outcomes. So
yeah,
that's the part that helps.
You have a guy that gets to free agency if all goes to shit, which is exciting.
But and his ability to hit fastballs and I think just the track record of hitting should help him more. And he's had a nice spring, which is nice to see. I am a little concerned about whiff being a bit more prevalent than maybe what was anticipated because of the track record, but he hits the living crap out of the ball. And if the whiff is more prevalent than anticipated, I'd like to see him maybe sell out for that a bit more. I don't think he needs to get to that point yet, but if he is striking out a bit more than expected, maybe selling out for the home runs a bit more and then the walks and being a little bit more 3 true outcome. You still have the hope of him being across the board, everything. But if the whiff continues to be more prevalent than expected, he has the raw power to hit 25 to 30 home runs. It's just that's not who he is as a hitter. So right now it's going to kind of be above average across the board. Can that be sustainable for him? That's the other reason why I like him, though, is there's kind of different paths to being productive. And ultimately, I think he finds that. Gold Glove caliber in the corner, really good in center, going to swipe a lot of bags, going to hit a lot of doubles, can still hit 20 plus homers. And it just comes down to that ability to hit the breaking balls. Number 5, Sebastian Walcott. Now, the Texas Rangers have a special talent here when you can really throw him into Double-A as an 18-year-old and he can survive. The defense at shortstop has actually progressed to a point where I'm like, you might as well just try it a little longer and see what happens. If he moves to third, I think he can be a really solid, above average third baseman. But we're talking about a 6'4", 6'5", 200-pound kid who already is popping 116s, runs at an above average clip. You wonder how much power might just be in there. He could maybe hit 40.
Yeah, which is why you see the 15-point jump in present to future value of the game power, because you can project even more from a guy that's 6'4". It's a different conversation because Chris Bryant was a college guy at the University of San Diego, but it does look a little Chris Bryant-ish. And I'm not talking like swing path. I'm just thinking you're a big guy that manages to hit baseballs over the wall a lot. And I think he can produce a little bit more raw power. But the fact that he is as well-rounded an athlete to go along with that power projection, like, I get really excited about this. And I think about, Chris Bryant's MVP season. Like, why can't that look like what Sebastian Walcott could do?
I mean, and you talk about the raw power being more significant. Like, that's why I think you could see 40 plus. It's just a matter of getting into it more consistently. Very long levers. He's young. So there's a lot of weak contact mixed in there. We'd get blown up on the hands or whatever, or just out and around the baseball. But the fact that he survived in high A and Double-A as an 18-year-old, mostly high A, is just remarkable. The swing decisions got better and better and better. And he can sell out to the pull side a little bit too much, but we've seen him catch it deep and go backside and hit it hard when he's under control. But to already be popping a 116, and I think a 114 the spring training already too, there's a lot in there that he's still just scraping the surface of tapping into. I ultimately think the best outcome, most realistic outcome for him, is him being an above average third baseman, hitting for a ton of power. He's going to whiff, but he's going to walk. And I think he could be all-star caliber in that regard. If he can stick it short, then he's probably the easy candidate for number 1 prospect in baseball. I do think Double-A is going to be a little bit of a test just from the handling of better stuff and everything, given how young and how big he is. But he got better as the year progressed last year. Over his final 50 games, he slashed 296, 339, 502.
Yeah.
And that's with only hitting 4 home runs. He had 20 doubles and 5 triples in those 50 games. So you imagine what he's going to be able to do as he gets into more game power and elevates more consistently.
Yeah.
Number 4, Walker Jenkins. Now, Jenkins is probably the odds-on favorite to be the next number 1 prospect, I'd imagine, just because of the floor-ceiling combination here. But with Walker Jenkins, it is a matter of just staying healthy at this point. And then he's another guy that does need to get into his game power a little bit more, where he's 6'4", 220. You can easily envision what can be in the power department, but he just hasn't gotten into it at that high of a clip yet.
Yeah.
the thing is, he doesn't necessarily need to be an above average big league regular because it's plus plate discipline, it's plus bat to ball, it's above average wheels. I think potentially above average glove in center field or plus in a corner. So even if he was 45 power, he'd still be an above average regular for a long time. But you can see the power potential in there. And it's just a matter of getting into it more consistently.
And the cool thing is this guy put the ball on the ground at a clip under 40%. Like it was 38.5%. So he's elevating. It's just a matter of like hitting more homers, as weird as it sounds. Like, just hit a little bit farther. And, I know easier said than done, but the fact that he was able to, pass tests of, low A and high A and get to double A in such a small sample because he was dealing with injury is astounding. Like this guy in 45 games in low A had an 886 OPS, and the Twins were like, okay, no, you're good enough for Cedar Rapids. And then 34 games in Cedar Rapids hit 290 with an 863 OPS. And they say, okay, you're ready for Wichita. Like, what are the things that he didn't accomplish in those 30-ish games at both those levels? It seemed like it was too easy for him. So it really is just a matter of being on the field.
Yeah.
And why can't he be an impact big leaguer by the end of the 25 season if he's passing every test like that?
I see a little reason why he can't be. And I think the last, other than the health side, is we've seen, so the EVs, he averages out at about 87.5, which is, it's fine, but it's too low for him right now. Fastball average exit velocity is 90 miles per hour. Secondary average exit velocity is 84. So he's a very simple swing guy, doesn't move much, but he's one where I do think he pushes out of the backside a little bit on secondaries. So it's more just of an armsy swing. The field it hits great, so he's just going to shoot it around the yard, but he's not going to do a ton of damage in that regard. So that's the one thing I would love to see a bit more progress with is, can he do more damage on those secondary pitches, keep his weight back and get the A swing off? It's just too frequently a B swing against secondaries. His B swing's great. It's going to be either a ground out or a ball shot the other way, but that is the thing to monitor. But another guy who makes great swing decisions, makes a ton of contact, and that's going to ensure that he's a big leaguer. It's just for the ceiling's sake, can we get into some more pop and hit the ball harder, more consistently? That's the thing to monitor this coming season. But as you mentioned, he walked more than he struck out. He elevates. So there's little reason to believe he can't get into more power.
Yeah.
Number 3, Jackson Jobe. Detroit Tigers pitching prospect. Should graduate this year. There's a little bit of conversation about how he's not missing enough bats. And that is a little bit of a surprise given how good the stuff is. He talked about it, and he kind of
overlay here.
Yeah,
great for the YouTube crowd.
Easy. Basically he said, I've been nibbling too much. I'm going to just start throwing the ball in the zone more. And if you can hit it, great. Like, probably not. And I loved that quote because the fastball might get hit a little bit here and there if he's leaving it over the middle, but the cutter, the changeup, that 3,000 RPM slider, it's going to prevail ultimately. Does it prevail in a way that it's ace stuff? Maybe not. But this is one of the highest probability big league starters we'll talk about for a while. And on top of that, I think it's such a high probability middle rotation starter because of the high octane stuff. It's just a little bit of shape conversation, a little bit of execution conversation. And he might just be a little bit more dependent on executing than we thought. But with that pitch mix, I think a huge wrinkle is just the changeup consistency because that pitch we saw looking phenomenal at points and just wasn't totally there last year.
Yeah. Chris McCoskey of Detroit News had the quote after a 3-pitch punch out of Vladdy. I'm tired of trying to dot a gnat's ass. Just here's my stuff. If you hit it, good. Odds are probably not. I also like the Pipeline tweeted it out, and in brackets they said but. So that was great. Jobe has that competitive fire, and obviously that. And within this article, you can click on the conversation with Jackson Jobe, and you can hear it. He's supremely confident, which makes me think that the execution is going to tick up. And I think execution overrides stuff pretty much all the time. And you think about, guys that have like, I'm remembering that we're having the same exact conversation with Paul Skeens at this point a year ago. And it's like, oh, is the fastball shape optimal enough? Yeah, well, I mean, when you land 102 exactly where you're supposed to land it, nobody's going to hit it anyways. Like, I don't care if it's 15 a vert and 15 a horizontal. Like, Jackson Jobe can be as dead zone if he wants, but like a 70 grade fastball comes from 100 with good shape, so it's not like it's 15 and 15, and he's putting it where he wants. So if fastball command gets better, I'm not worried about a single thing with him.
Yeah, and I think some of it is, and the reason why it's not playing at a 70 right now is it is somewhat of a generic release, so you don't have as much deception built in. But I don't think that's the problem. It's been the command of it. Like in spring training so far, his fastball strike rate's been south of 60%. I'm not worried about it overall.
It's probably down the heart of the plate, right?
Exactly, and that's why it got hit. But the cutter at 90 is a great like difference to add here. It's a bridge between that bigger breaking ball that made him the very popular high school prep prospect, and then the changeup and a heavier sinker as well. He has just so many different ways that he can get you out that he is a guy that ultimately I could see him still riding. It's different, but like the Sandy Alcantara path to success too. Will it be to that degree? No, but I could just see him getting a lot of weak fly balls, getting the ground balls when he needs to. And it's like, oh, he's not striking out 10 per 9. What the heck? Well, who cares? He's got a sub 3. Like that's another path to success for him. So that's why I feel like there's so many different ways where he can be successful.
Yeah.
Number 2, Roki Sasaki. People are, oh, he's not a prospect, blah, blah, blah. I agree. I don't really want to rank him. But if we aspire to have one of the most highly regarded prospect lists, I have to rank a guy that's going to count towards the prospect promotion incentive. That rule is literally predicated on the best and most well-respected lists in the industry, ranking him as a top 100 prospect, and then him being the rookie of the year. And since he's eligible for the PPI pick, I have to rank him because I want to follow the same rules that the best in the industry follow. So sorry if you're like, why are you ranking this guy? I get it. We have to. Anything else?
No. You want to talk about the Tokyo start?
Yeah. What did you think of that? You woke up for that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was listening to it on the radio, and the amount of low for ball 1 I heard from Tim Neverett and Rick Monday was crazy.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If he's not landing the splitter in the strike zone, or if he's not getting chased, it might be a long day for Roki Sasaki. And I'm starting with all the bad before we get to the good, because the splitter is a true 80 grade pitch. I think it's the only 80 grade pitch you have in the top 100, right? Or does Mizorowski have an 80 grade pitch?
Mizorowski's fastball is 70 present, 80 future.
70, 80. So this is the only 80 present.
It's the only 80, 80.
Yeah. Okay. So if he's not landing it, he's going to have to nibble a little bit with that fastball. And I think he was very nervous in Tokyo. I am waiting with bated breath for his first start stateside and his second start stateside. If it doesn't look better by his second start stateside, I'm like, okay, does this guy have confidence within the strike zone to get a major league lineup out 3 times in a row? And the answer is going to be yes, very, very soon. But for the Dodgers, like, they want it to be yes right away.
Yeah.
And for the sake of Roki Sasaki's billing, they want it to be right away. And I watched the condensed game back. I mean, I saw all the Stuff Plus models spit out like a 125 for everything. And it's like, oh, yeah, it looks like a future ace. It was a sub 50% strike rate, was it not?
It was sub 50. He threw 15 splitters. Or actually, he threw 19 splitters, I have here, and 6 strikes.
I mean, if that pitch isn't landing at a 50% clip, you can't survive.
No. And here's the reason why he's a number 2 prospect. Because people are like, why is he even 2? I know people are also like, well, how if you're considering Roki Sasaki a prospect, he has to be.
Yeah, he's Nolan Ryan.
No. So his splitter will make him, at worst, one of the best closers in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
Like, I think at worst, this guy is kind of in the same conversation of like a Yohan Duran type of thing. Like that's where I see it being the worst. Because you imagine in a 1-inning spurt, he's probably sitting 101. Yeah. I see the floor kind of being that Yohan Duran. But the aspirations are much higher than that, and they should be. And I think they will be better. The outcome will be better than that. The thing is, this is a fastball that actually has shape concerns. He lost 2 vert and last year relative to his other years in NPB. And then you naturally are going to lose 2 more vert stateside using the MLB ball, which he did lose.
So it got dead zoney.
It's not getting the life that you would want from a very generic over the top release. The 4-seam will get hit hard if it's 97, 98. If it's 101, it won't matter. If it's 100, it won't matter. But we saw the velo tick down a little bit. And even in this outing, it wasn't the 99.2 that he averaged in his 2023 season in the NPB. It was 98. And that's fine. But that's only fine if he's spotting. And he hasn't been spotting nearly as much since he dealt with that shoulder discomfort last year. So the reason why Roman Anthony's number 1 and Roki Sasaki's number 2. Sasaki's 23 years old. Sasaki has had injuries in basically each of the last 3 years. And that is trending in a way where the shape is a bit concerning. And he does seem to be a liability for undergoing some sort of arm procedure within the 6 years of team control, which is how we base these lists, right? So he's probably going to miss a year and change at some point. I hope not, but given his history and just kind of the challenges that he's faced, it's possible. But also Roman Anthony's 20 years old, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But what I love about Sasaki is the ability, and the hedges a concern about the breaking ball and things like that. And I think the Dodgers have probably told him, like, we don't really care about your breaking ball as much because we'd rather focus on your ability to manipulate the splitter. And you'll see some of these splitters come out and get labeled as sliders. Those are the splitters that he's manipulating by putting more pressure on one of his fingers. And I'd imagine it's probably that middle finger. That is what makes it so insanely gross. The splitter is basically 2 different pitches. You basically have one that stops in midair, and then you have one that cuts a little bit too. So having those 2 different pitches takes a lot of the concern away of needing a true third, but you still need that fastball to be better. And even the fastball command, he was nibbling. It was like a 50% strike rate. I will chalk that up to nerves and pitching in Tokyo and things like that. But I saw some of the similar things even in the spring training outings we've seen. So I think for him to be at his best, they do ultimately need to find that taste breaking ball to mix in there. But it's really going to come down to the consistency command wise, because hitters are going to go into the box there, sitting fastball, and saying anything that starts at my belt, I'm not going to swing at. I'm going to try my best not to swing at. And until he's spotting the fastball at the knees and elevating it and then working the splitter off of it, the splitter's not going to play as well. Yeah. Number 1, Roman Anthony. I mean, in a span of 2 days, I saw him hit one at spring breakout where fans are chanting overrated. It was just a handful of Rays fans. And he hits the living crap out of one and bat flips and stares at it. Then the next day, you watch him get off, I think one of the craziest swings I've seen in a while, which you can talk about. But the reason why he's the number 1 prospect in baseball, even if you consider Sasaki a prospect, is because he's not going to play center for the Red Sox, but he has the ability to play center field. It's an above average corner. He has, I think, 70 future game power that we're starting to really see flash more consistently. It's an average field to hit. It's plus plate discipline. And I think we're like just starting to see what the power can ultimately be. Yeah. He ran a hard hit rate last year of 53%. 53% of his batted balls were north of 95 miles per hour. Think about that. Yeah. 90th percentile of 109 miles per hour. That puts him in the top of Major League Baseball in that regard. Contact rates that are above average, chase rates that are fantastic, and it's all fields power. This is a potential star.
So Roman, that homer that you mentioned, I just wanted to pull up like the specs on this because it was a decent pitch from Ronnie Enriquez. It was 96.5 that spun it over 2,500, and it had 18.5 inches of vert. It was like, I don't know. I'm going to freeze frame this. I think it was collarbone high on Roman.
Yeah.
Let me see. As I scroll. Yeah, it was about shoulder high from Roman, and he managed to put on the shortest swing that I've ever seen, hit a ball 114 miles an hour at 17 degrees that had a hang time of 3.5 seconds for a pull side home run. Like it was it was a get that shit out of here swing.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that was. It was swatting it into oblivion, and that was a jaw-dropping homer. I've only seen a couple of jaw-dropping homers in person. James Wood hit one earlier this spring that was 110 the other way off the bat, and it was like
That one was
17
crazy.
degrees or something, and he went down to like his shins to fish that out and hit it to left center field. And then Roman Anthony here. I was floored at what that was. So I totally buy the 70 grade power, and he is built like a god, man. I mean, if he can survive in center field, I see no reason why this can't be one of the best power hitting outfielders in baseball. And you have the boost to center field. All-star games are in his future, and like plural, more than 5.
It's just about elevating more consistently. And that's always been the theme with him. And he's been chipping away at that ground ball, right? Chipping away at it. But what he has shown, and that what I love, is that he doesn't need to hit homers to be productive. His final 30 games of the year, which was double and triple A, 375, 503, 571 slash line. And in that span, he had 42 hits, only 3 homers, but 11 doubles and a triple. And even when you look at his AAA stint, like, he didn't hit a ton of homers, but it was a ton of doubles. Final 50 games of the year, he hit 350 with an OPS over 1,000.
Man.
And the other thing that is crazy with him, 130 games last year, he had 79 batted balls, 105 plus. Dude. If he cuts that ground ball rate a little bit lower to 42, 41%, he's going to be in business. But I remember watching the games in Greenville, the amount of backside bombs he hit over that monster, he's going to do more of that too. He's going to pepper that. He's going to miss hit balls that hit the monster. They're going to have an XBA of whatever, and people are going to but he's going to hit it off the end, and it's going to still hit halfway up the wall. He's going to feast there. And then you pair in plus defense. Oh, there we go. Peyton's got the screenshot. I mean, that is up there. And it's 370, 114, 17 degrees. This dude is a monster. And somebody asked in our Discord, like, what's keeping him back from 65 future value? Not much. That's why he's 60 plus. I think it could be 65, to be honest. He's right there. Left on left, by the way, as well, 310, 407, 480 last year. So you're just going to be really hard pressed to find an issue with him. Yeah. And that's why he's the number 1 prospect in baseball, even if you consider Roki Sasaki a prospect.
Amazing.
That'll do it. Also, a reminder, join the Discord. We'd love to have you in there. We're talking prospects all the time and doing some bonus content in there, and just a lot of fun things going on within the Discord. But we're also going to be doing a lot of breaks. I'm getting ready for our first Bowman Draft box break in there, and cheap discounted spots for you there. We're talking ball pretty much 24/7, and I'm always sending in early thoughts, early access. And then as the season starts, I'll be sending in recaps pretty much every single day on what's going on in the minor league. So really excited to have more of you in there. The link to join is in the episode description. Thank you as always for checking out the Top 100 and for hanging out with us through all of these episodes. We're going to be back on the team top prospect grind, which is going to be great. Atlanta Braves next week, as well as the Colorado Rockies on the heels of that as well. Any final thoughts, Jack?
No, huge thank you to Peyton. This was a fun added element on the video front, just having the B-roll playing at the outset, and we're walking through 22-1 right now. But no, he was excellent today. I'm excited to get a little bit more involved with the Discord now that this is in the rear view, and we can really gear up and get ready for opening day. I mean, we're going to start to get assignments here, and we're going to see some of the more stacked rosters in minor league baseball. Always love compiling that list, and we'll make that an episode. So after the Braves and Rockies, we'll get is that going to be opening day? Like our huge, hey, welcome to opening day. Welcome to this new week. You've got the Braves and the Rockies top prospects. It's kind of boring,
the Rockies,
but it's okay.
Just the Rockies are going to do the opening day celebration.
Yeah, but no, I'm excited to walk through, the most talented minor league teams that we'll have in baseball. And it's going to be really fun to monitor all these guys.
And we'll probably have an update around June. But again, those folks in the Discord will be getting updates on where we're headed, just some of the stream of consciousness things. And I love kind of looping everybody in that regard. That's always been a lot of fun. And just, again, any questions on it, happy to answer it. Feel free to DM me, but would love to have you involved there. And appreciate you joining us for these 10 plus hours of Top 100 breakdown. And we will talk prospects with you next week. Have a great weekend.